Hello, and welcome everyone. We're so excited that so many of you all are joining us from across the nation. My name is Ashley Singleton, and I am a senior program manager with the National Training and Technical Assistance Center, or NTAC for short. We are going to get started pretty much on time because we have a jam-packed hour, and we also want to have conversations with you all and dialogue. So we're going to get started, but I would love to know where you all are zooming in from across the nation. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, where it's still like strangely winter-ish outside. I don't really understand, but I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Would love to see where you all are coming in from. Nashville, Tennessee. My brother lives in Nashville. I love that city. Chattanooga, Columbia. Hey, I went to University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. So excited to see so many people from all across the nation. And we are going to go ahead and get started on this incredible session today, preventing adverse childhood experiences. Where do we go from here? All righty. So as a disclaimer, we have some fantastic and wonderful panelists and a moderator today. Their views and opinions are theirs of their own. Although we're funded by SAMHSA, their views do not represent SAMHSA or the organization. So wanted to make that disclaimer up front. Also, if there are any security issues, which hopefully there will not be. But if there are security issues, we will immediately end this session and send you all an email with further instructions on how to rejoin. There are a lot of folks who want to know, will you receive a certificate of completion? Yes, you will. Can you receive a copy of this presentation? We'll definitely do that. And we will also share a recording of this event. So if you want to hear this presentation again or share it with others, a recording will be made available. If you are new to the NTAC community, welcome. We're excited that you're here. At NTAC, we are focused on all children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges. We provide resources to people like you and all across the country, such as trainings like this. We also provide technical assistance services for no cost. We provide customized coaching, all sorts of resources. So if you are not a part of our listserv already, please be sure to use the link there on the slide, bit.ly, bit.ly NTAC sign up, or you can scan the bit.ly QR code to sign up for our newsletter so you never miss an opportunity that we have to offer. We also want to give a huge shout out to our partners that help us do the work that we do, and a special shout out to our partners that's helping us with this session and the series that comes after this session, PACEsConnection. And I want to pass the mic quickly over to Ingrid to tell us a little more about PACEsConnection.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And we're excited to be partnering with NTAC today for this event. So I wanted to give a very quick call to action. PACEsConnection is a social network really dedicated to really supporting communities domestically and internationally that are doing resilience and trauma-focused work. So we invite you to become a member. You definitely have access to our resources. We have one of the largest online resources for trauma and resilience-focused resources. And invite you to start a movement so that you can foster healing in your own community. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Ingrid. Like I mentioned earlier, this session is designed to have dialogue with the audience. And when we have dialogue, we always want to be mindful of using affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language. So I'm going to just leave this slide open for a second for us to make sure we're all on the same page and grounded and what that language looks like. So that's strength-based, inclusive and accepting, healing-centered, inviting individuals to participate in their own journeys. First person, or person first, and free of labels, non-judgmental, respectful, and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. So it's really important that as we have a conversation today, that we keep these affirming language, this affirming language in mind. All righty, so now I am going to pass the mic over to today's moderator, Dion, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Ashley. And thank you all for joining us today to discuss this very important topic, preventing adverse childhood experiences. Where do we go from here? I am Dr. Dion Smith Kokarapia, and I am honored to serve as the moderator for this panel discussion. We are joined by three exceptional panelists, Dr. Sarah Vinson, Mr. Brandon Jones, and Ms. Alexis Davis, who are all passionate about this topic and will share knowledge, expertise, and lived experiences from multiple perspectives to help guide the discussion. In an effort to ground us a bit, when we refer to adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, we are focusing on traumatic events that occur during childhood, and that's typically between the ages of 0 to 17 years. ACEs have lasting effects, negative effects on health, well-being, and opportunity. And I just want to highlight that the initial CDC Kaiser study, which was conducted in the mid-90s, identified 10 ACEs, which were grounded in adversities that typically occur in the home. And they were divided into three categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And we'll definitely learn more about that from our panelists as we move along. But to further ground us, as we move toward action steps and solutions during the discussion, you'll hear more also about positive childhood experiences, which are essentially life experiences, positive life experiences that are aligned with helping children develop healthy self-regulation, coping skills, and opportunities to heal from the effects of ACEs. As research has developed in this area, additional ACEs have been identified, particularly those related to racism, discrimination, stigma, minority stress, historical trauma, etc., which more fully allow us to capture the experiences of diverse communities. Therefore, this panel discussion will also include an intentional focus on an exploration of the role of racism, oppression, and historical trauma on the development and perpetuation of ACEs. But we will not only focus on the problem, we will also focus on actions and solutions. Finally, our discussion today is also grounded in the social ecological model, which enables us to critically examine this issue from multiple perspectives, and we will focus specifically on societal, community, relationship, and individual perspectives. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll begin our discussion with Dr. Sarah Vinson, who will focus on the societal level perspective. And Dr. Vinson is an associate professor of psychiatry and pediatrics, triple board certified in child and adolescent, adult, and forensic psychiatry. She serves as the program director of the Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Fellowship at Morehouse School of Medicine, a medical advisor for the African American Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, and the interim chair for the Psychiatry and Behavioral Health Sciences at Morehouse School of Medicine. Dr. Vinson, please take it away.
Thank you, and I'll say good day because I know we have people from all over. So don't know what time zones folks are in. Really happy to join you all and be part of this discussion today. And I am hoping that it is just that, a discussion. So I'll have a few opening remarks, but really I want to spend at least half of the time allotted to me on questions. So in my career as a child and adolescent, adult, and forensic psychiatrist, I've had this perspective that is informed by doing public sector work, so seeing families who are publicly insured or maybe not insured at all, private sector work where I'm seeing middle upper class families, but then also within the correctional setting, both in juvenile justice and adult fields. And what's been evident there is that often it's less about the things we pay attention to, like diagnoses. It's more about what insurance do they have, where do they live, what's actually available to people, what's actually driving their symptoms. And a lot of that happens outside of medicine as it is traditionally defined. And so this has led to an interest in this area of not just thinking about social determinants of health, but thinking about social justice and health. And so I'll walk you guys through this diagram in a second, but wanted to go through a couple of definitions first. And one is a definition of mental health. And it may seem like a really elementary place for us to start, but I would challenge you that a lot of times, especially in treatment settings or intervention settings, even when we say mental health, we're talking about illness, we're talking about diagnoses, we're talking about symptoms, we're talking about trying to address something after a problem has already arisen. And if they're getting to someone like me, it's really tertiary care at that point. We're not talking about prevention and promotion or what the ideal is that we would like people to be able to move toward or go toward. So that's why I start with this mental health definition. And this is one from the World Health Organization. And it says that mental health is a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. And I welcome you to reflect on that definition and on how much of it has to do with relationship, has to do with interaction, whether that is with family or individuals or with the broader society, right? In order to work productively and fruitfully, there are aspects of that that are dependent on the job market and what's available to people, about being able to make a contribution to your community. There are ways that that's going to be dictated by these broader societal structures. And so that definition of mental health is useful for thinking about mental health more broadly. But I think it's also instructive for what it doesn't include, right? It doesn't include people's scores on their symptom rating scales. It doesn't include, did they take their medication the way the doctor said they should take it? It's more about how they're functioning in the broader world. And so I would argue that mental health, especially when we're talking about population mental health or something as broad as adverse childhood experiences, is one that we can't stop at the individual level to address, but that there are these bigger, more overarching issues that we have to think about. When you think about social justice, it may seem like it's a loaded term or it's a political term, and in some ways it has been politicized. But there's a definition by John Rawls of social justice that says, assuring the protection of equal access to liberties, rights, and opportunities, as well as taking care of the least advantaged members of society. And so that definition, for those of you in the helping field, probably doesn't sound all that controversial, probably has threads or elements that you relate to that are part of your drivers for doing this work. And so when we think about that definition of mental health, about being able to enter into the community and work and contribute meaningfully and resolve conflicts, that there's a way that these protections, these rights, these liberties are going to position people to be able to achieve that idea of mental health, or present barriers to people being able to achieve that idea of mental health. And so when we think about those two things and hold those two things, I ask you to bring that to looking at this diagram. So this is from the book Social Injustice and Mental Health, which I co-edited. But one of the things that it highlights is how we have these adverse experiences that we know drive poor mental health outcomes, right? And we've gotten better about talking about the social determinants. So things like food insecurity, homeless or housing instability, ACEs, exposure to violence, right? These are all things that we know create a pathway toward mental health symptoms or mental health diagnoses. So with those exposures, you have physiologic stress. People cope with those stressors in ways that may be adaptive or not, depending on what their community is and the options available to them. They may have poor choices that are sometimes phrased as poor choices of the individual, when really they're limited choices that the individual has given where they are. But the stress, the options, the limited options, the maladaptive coping, the risk factors, all contribute to adverse mental health outcomes and contribute to mental health inequities, not just on the treatment side, but on what sets people up to end up having things that are in need of treatment or mental health conditions. And so this understanding that food insecurity, housing insecurity are bad for mental health is not something that's new. It's not something that we don't have data to back up. And it's something, frankly, that society could have acted on a long time ago, right? Especially if we're talking about the US, we're in a society that absolutely has the resources to address these things. Even with us knowing they increase the risk of negative mental health outcomes, we choose to subject large proportions of our society, a disproportionately high proportion of our children, to them. So then there's a question of how is that happening? Why is that allowed to happen? We know this is harmful, yet we still expose our future to it. And that is fundamentally a social justice question, because that comes back to how we're distributing those opportunities and resources, and understanding that we have traditionally and currently constructed society in such a way that we just accept that there are a group of people that are going to be exposed to a lot of these things that we know are tied to negative mental health outcomes. So when we're thinking about adverse childhood experiences, when we're thinking about positive childhood experiences, when we're wanting to set our population up to be healthier, we really can't have that conversation without talking about public policies and social norms, and how that conversation has to include advocacy and pushes to change policies and norms so that fewer people are exposed to these things that we know are bad for their mental well-being, and don't put them on a trajectory toward having a mentally healthy childhood, adolescence, or adulthood. And with that, I will pause and open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent, for that very thoughtful and insightful overview with a specific focus on the societal level. And I was going to ask, one of my questions that I really wanted to ask you was to share your thoughts about ACEs as a major public health issue and how we might begin to influence policy in that area. But you touched on that a bit, so I'm going to ask you a different question instead. And I really like the fact that you highlighted social justice issues, and we can't have a discussion about social justice without addressing intentionally racism. And so there's a growing body of literature that suggests that ACEs measures should include a focus on exposure to institutional and systemic and structural racism, and that efforts to improve public health by preventing ACEs must take this exposure into account. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and I think if you are going to use that framework of things that are exposed to kids we know are associated with negative outcomes, you really can't argue about whether structural racism should be one or not, right? It becomes politically loaded, especially in this environment, once you're talking about public agencies gathering that or talking about those things. So I think that there are practical limitations that may be imposed to doing that. But I think that there's a way that we in the field can account for that, can work around that, even if the powers that be don't always allow us to explicitly do so. The other way that I think we have to be more intentional, and I'll kind of speak for the mental health care providers, is in thinking about how those things factor in, even if they're not a part of the rating scale, even if they're not part of the DSM diagnostic criteria, because we are well supported in documenting that as a driver of anxious thoughts or fearful thoughts or behaviors, right? So there's a way that we can use our formulations and our diagnoses of people to capture that, even if criteria A for PTSD doesn't include police violence against people who look like you, right? But I think there's a way that we need to push and should push as mental health clinicians for our diagnostic criteria to start to fold those things in as well. I think you're on mute, Doc.
I most certainly am on mute. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent, for your contribution today. And this is very exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your work as we move forward. We're now going to move on to our next panelist, who is Mr. Brandon Jones. Mr. Jones is the Executive Director for the Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health. He has a consulting and therapy background in addressing adverse childhood experiences, historical and intergenerational trauma, social emotional intelligence, leadership, and the intercultural development inventory. Mr. Jones holds a bachelor's degree in sociology, a master's in community psychology, and a master's in psychotherapy. He is also a 2013 Bush Foundation Leadership Fellow. His contribution today will focus on the relationship and community level perspective. Mr. Jones?
Amazing. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I am coming to you virtually from the Twin Cities of Minnesota, where we have become ground zero for all things social justice. So Dr. Vinson's lead into my talk is a great connection point. I'm going to share a lot of information with you in a short amount of time, so I hope that you can connect some of these dots and jot some things down as I go. I'm focusing on relationship and community, and what we've known in the ACEs research is that relationships, healthy relationships, are the key ingredient to resiliency. And I know this from my personal and professional life. I'm no longer a mental health clinician, but I've done tons of work over the years as a clinician doing those diagnoses, as Dr. Vincent talked about, factoring in those cultural elements for so many different people and how important that is, especially when adversity shows up in the life of a young person. So relationships, we know that are key. We know that when we build those bonds, those connections, those friendships, and even sometimes those contracts, those are key for anything to solve problems. So the importance of relationships and community mitigate the effects of ACEs and can't be overstated. A supportive network of family, friends, professionals can provide individuals with the emotional and practical support that is needed to cope with the experiences, the expectations, and the process of healing. This support can include help with managing emotions, developing problem-solving skills, and finding resources to address problems that arise. Healthy relationships also give individuals a sense of belonging, security, and significance, and it can be critical to helping people overcome various different challenges that come from developing ACEs. But it's important for us to make sure that we define things that we talk about, because in the ACE work, we talk a lot about healing, but we don't often define what healing is. And healing can be subjective depending on what people have gone through. So the approach that I've taken, and I developed this approach as a clinician, I was doing some soul searching when I got burnt out. I got burnt out. Being a Black male therapist is like being a unicorn. Like, we barely exist, and people find us, they hold on very, very tight. And what I was doing was I was really trying to figure out, like, why do people come to therapy? Why do people come to me for help? Because I was really just trying to figure out what makes me significant in the work. And what I landed on was three things. I landed on people came to therapy to seek peace, balance, and justice. And that's what I used as the frame for my definition for healing, which is healing is a consistent process of efforts to create peace, balance, and justice. And we know we can't create peace, balance, and justice alone. We do that in collectives and systems with people, with bonds. And that's very, very important. So here's my big idea. How can we do this? How can we do this collectively? And Dr. Vincent walked right into it, right into it for me. So I'm glad that we have some synergy and some connection here for all of you today. My big idea is a relationship, or we can even say a marriage between the mental health world and the public health world. I think this is the approach we have to take in order for us to be a much more healed community. And the interesting thing is, when it comes to public health has done a lot of good things and has transformed so many different communities. And mental health, for some reason, has a bad rap, but there's a lot of different dynamics for why that is. But these two areas, these two spaces that have not always gotten along historically, have not always worked well collectively together, can come together to help move this country forward in this world. And I think the pandemic was a prime opportunity to why these two fields need to come together. And the reason for that is this. This was probably the first time in human history where everyone said, hey, our mental health, our mental well-being is not where we want it to be. Our emotional well-being is not where we want it to be. Let's go talk to somebody. And the demand skyrocketed, and it continues to skyrocket. But guess what? We didn't have the supply to meet the demand. And us in the mental health profession knew for a long time we did not have enough therapists in general. We knew that we did not have enough therapists that spoke multiple languages. We knew that we did not have enough therapists from different ethnic and racial backgrounds. And now people are finally saying, I need someone to talk to, but we don't have enough of that. So what can we do? We know that people can heal. We know that, every day-to-day distress doesn't need to lead to a crisis situation. We know that everyone doesn't need to talk to a mental health therapist or professional. We also know that people do not need to go to emergency rooms to get their mental and emotional well-being taken care of. We have to do something different. And I think that by taking a public health approach and joining these two worlds together and working on initiatives across this nation is the way to go in order to help. So mental health and public health are two important fields that must come together to improve the well-being of society. Mental health includes preventing, diagnosing, and treating mental health disorders and illnesses, while public health focuses on promoting healthy behaviors and environments. So in order to create a holistic approach, improving the well-being and merging these two disciplines together, I believe is essential. And here's one of my kind of proven examples to why I think this will work. Think about smoking. And if you're a smoker, this is not to attack you. This is just for you to think about. Think about how smoking was from, let's just say, the 60s to the 90s, how frequent people used to smoke in airports. People used to smoke in restaurants and hotel lobbies, in all types of spaces, in workspaces, smoke-filled rooms. And think about where smoking is today. If you were on an airplane and someone lit up a cigarette, that person might get tackled. Like something may happen to that person. How do we get to this level of addressing smoking the way we are? Well, it was through public health. At first, it was, through lobbying and policy through big tobacco, but then there were public health efforts as well. Those public health efforts started to create zones for people to smoke during their breaks at work, started to ban smoking in certain places and create smoking specific areas and things of that nature. And then we started to see a shift in the behavior and the culture around smoking to where we are today, where, if you were in a space, let's just say where you are right now, and someone lit up a cigarette and you're not used to that, that makes you respond in a particular type of way. So we can do that with something as addictive as smoking has been proven to be, as difficult as a habit it is to change. I think we can also do it with mental health. So in closing, I want to share just two more things with you all. This is the thing that I call the 5 I's for us. This is one of the public health approaches that we can take. These are the 5 things that I think that we all need in order to make this shift happen. We need to have cultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence. It's not just about racism. It's about all different cultures that are blending together in this great nation that we are in. And if we don't have cultural intelligence and learn how to function amongst one another, we will continue to have the disruptions and the frustrations that we have. And ACEs will continue to grow and new ACEs will show up for many different people. We are culturally being meshed and immersed more than ever before. It is time for us to learn how to collaborate and connect as best as possible. So that's 1 I. Social and emotional intelligence is the other one. We have to learn in ourselves how to, regulate and move ourselves forward. We also have to have initiatives, actual efforts to do these things. We also have to have interventions because there's stuff that's already happening. How do we intervene and shift some of the environments? And then the last I is we have to have intentionality. We can't make any of these changes if we're not going to be very intentional and understand that different communities need different things and different people need different things. And don't be afraid to call those different things out, because those little differences between groups, between communities, between each other are those things that are significant and that will help to invoke the change that we all need. And the last thing that I'm going to share, and then I'm going to be quiet, is something called post-traumatic growth. And this is the relationship level of what the independent person can do. If everyone can do a little bit of their own post-traumatic growth, I think we can move forward. Now, post-traumatic growth is something I didn't come up with it. You can Google it and find tons of information about it. It is the process that can lead to improved relationships with others, more compassion, openness, appreciation for life, spiritual growth, personal strength, and a renewed sense of possibility in the world. It's going to take a united, independent effort from all of us to work on the things that we experienced, especially if you have gone through any type of trauma or adversity in your life. And we have to remember that ACEs are not a destination. They're not an identity. ACEs are experiences on our journey. And on this journey, we're all doing various different efforts to find that peace, balance, and justice that I talked about a moment ago. So with that, I'll pause and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Brandon. I must admit that you are speaking my language. Everything you shared is just, I'm resonating with it, particularly around healthy relationships as a vehicle towards resilience, and then your definition of healing, incorporating peace, balance, and justice. And then the marriage between mental health and public health, you're speaking my language. I had several questions for you prepared, but there was one question
Go for it.
in the chat that I wanted to sort of highlight because I think it's relevant to what you shared. This question is from Takasha Smith, and she commented that she loves your definition of healing, but her question is, what do you do when one or more of those three can't be achieved? For example, justice is often out of our hands in what our youth are facing, even if we can move toward peace and balance. What are your thoughts about that, Brandon?
That's a great question. And I'm gonna give some challenge and some pushback to that question as well. I think justice can be achieved. Things just don't happen all in sequence together. And I think sometimes justice happens when you have a different approach. And I think that justice can be in people's hands, but we have to have a different approach. This is why I talked about those 5 eyes. Sometimes we have to shift and be more intentional with what's going on. I don't think that, I think that the things that are happening with young people is because we don't have the right people at the tables. And sometimes we have to have the right people making the right policies, the right changes, and some youth voice as well to what can actually happen for those things. And it just doesn't happen in a vacuum. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take some time for us to adjust as well. But I also will say this, because I don't want to leave on a negative tone, because I feel like that was a little bit more of a negative answer for myself. But if all three aren't achieved, that's okay. Sometimes people just need, some balance to move forward. Sometimes people just need to know that they had the correct thing that happened in their life to move forward. Sometimes people need to, they just need just one of those things to move forward. The goal is just to help people continue on in their journey, not to solve the complete problem all the time. Some of these problems can be solved, but again, it's an individual effort from all of us. Sometimes, especially as professionals, we are in just a moment in someone's life, and we may plant a seed that ends up being sprouted and developed later on, and that's important as well, is that we just continue to do our work.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for your question, and thank you, Brandon, for your response. So we are going to move on, and our final panelist is Miss Alexis Davis, who is an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, located in northern North Dakota, and has lived on the reservation her entire life. Alexis has a bachelor's degree in Ojibwe language, culture, and history from the Turtle Mountain Community College. She uses her degree to work with schools, programs, and entities within her community to help them incorporate the culture within their systems and everyday life. She hopes this will help to generationally heal her people. She is also a mother of 2 boys and loves to increase her traditional knowledge whenever she can. Ms. Davis will focus on the individual level perspective today. Ms. Davis, floor is yours.
Hey guys.
Hi.
First off, I am going to mention that I work from home, and my boyfriend and my kids are also home, and I just live in their world. Okay, so if you hear some stuff in the background, I apologize, but like I said, I just live in their world. I'm just here. So yeah, I think everyone, let's just take a mental turn. We've talked about a lot of great things, but let's think about ourselves right now. Let's think about our own journeys at this moment. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I've been through, as an Indigenous person, working in the community, working at the state level, life experience and all of these things. My hope is when I express these things and I tell these stories, is that you go, hey, I've been through that too. And I feel heard and I feel seen, and we're connecting, right? Because I feel like that connection is very important, because that's what helped me, change my shifts. I've been through, when I was 13, I believe, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I had suicidal thoughts and all these things. I went to therapy after the fact, and I was so scared, right? I was like, I don't need anyone to know that I have issues, right? But then this girl at lunch, she goes, yeah, I have therapy in an hour. And I was like, this is okay to talk about. We could talk about this. You're in the same situation. We're all, it just really connected me. So that's why I do what I do. So now I'm an open book. You can ask me anything and we can talk about anything. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is Indigenous birthrights. This is kind of a heavy topic. The way that I feel is something that is harsh to realize and to accept as an Indigenous person. I was born with all of these things that I didn't necessarily want to be signed up for, generational trauma. When I came into this world, there was traumas that I got handed to me, right? Missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. Because I am a woman, because I'm Indigenous, I have a target on my back at all times, right? I have all these statistics against me. The rate of sexual abuse is higher. Domestic abuse is higher. Drug and alcohol abuse is higher. So when you're a kid, right, and you're a youth, that is like, hey, this is all the stuff that you got signed up for and you got nothing really to do about it. You didn't contribute yet, but here you go. Here's all this, unpack it. It's hard, right? And it's like, geez, like I just got here and I'm already signed up for all these hard things. So you have to kind of slow down after a while and say that, hey, I am more than these things. I can defeat these things. I can do great things. I could work through my trauma. I could take the precautionary measures as an Indigenous girl or person to make sure I am safe. My members are safe, my community members. How do we change this cycle, right? It's all about cycle changes. And and now leading into becoming a mother, I'm a mother of 2 boys. They're both under 2. So that's fun. I'm having a great time with that. But when I became a mother and dealing with a lot of trauma and honestly trauma within my family, I had to make the decision of how I wanted to parent, right? How do I change these toxic cycles? How am I aware of my children's emotions and how I deal with them, right? And that is something you could take on as a person and an individual person going towards your community. How do you contribute like that? Being a cycle breaker is very intimidating because there's no handbook, right? No one told me, well, there's a lot of things actually. You could do this, and this. There's pros and cons to this way to react to your child. There's pros and cons to this way to react to your child. Even sleep schedules, there's pros and cons. Are we taking naps on time? Are we not taking naps on time? Are we going to bed? Are we eating at this time? It's really difficult, and you have to. And the biggest thing is you need to do what's good for yourself and what's good for your family, right? What's good for your kids, because they're going to tell you, they're going to react, and it may not be like, hey, I don't like this. It's not going to be plain, simple, and point, but you really you see them, right? And now becoming a mother, I see, I'm able to see those signs that I was distributing as a kid, how I was wanting to be heard. Instead of saying, you need to listen to me, you need to hear me, you need to see these feelings that I am feeling. I didn't have a way to do that. So I was doing it in physical terms. Like I was crying, I was not eating, I was not talking to people. And if anyone really knows me, I'm a very outgoing person. So when I reserved, I was like, someone has to see that I am not myself right now. I wanted someone to notice me. And when no one was noticing me, that's when I really felt like I wasn't seen, right? So now as a mom, I really could see those physical showings, right? And I'm also aware that I could help my kids. We can identify these things, right? Why are you upset right now? Why this is not what we're doing when we're upset. And this is how we identify. Are you angry? What does angry mean? Just changing that cycle. And I also would like to mention that as moms, I really have came to see that sometimes we are overlooked. We really are. very much so. I understand postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, the whole PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD after I had given birth to both of my sons and, all of this stuff. So I just want to say that a mom sees other moms. I see you as a mom, right? And the biggest thing I want you to take away as a mother is that you need to fill your own cup so it flows into their cups, right? And this goes for any relationship, but it's the biggest one when you're a mother. You need to take care of yourself, overflow your cup so it goes into theirs, right? And that's when things grow, and that's when things are good, because when you're good, they're good. And that was really hard for me because I was like, no, these guys come first, I come last, right? I need to take care of my mental health. I need to understand the trauma that I was going through. Okay. And now as going towards diagnoses, like I said, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, anxiety, PTSD. Just really quick, my sons were within for the first year, both of their lives, I almost lost them to different things. My first son has hydrocephalus, and my second, I almost lost RSV. So seeing my sons in NICU and on all these tubes and things like that, it was really hard. And then when I got diagnosed these things, I was like, here comes my imposter syndrome. What? Are you kidding? I didn't go through that stuff. I'm right here. I can't have ADHD, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. I'm good, right? No. I just didn't believe that I was in this, right? And I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe in the trauma that I went through because I was completely other than, like, I can't think of the correct word, but I was outside of myself, right? I wasn't there emotionally and I wasn't there mentally, but I was there physically. And I think the biggest thing with diagnoses is that does not define your entire being, right? It could looked at very negative, and that's how I looked at it at first. Like, no one's gonna want to talk to me, and no one's gonna want to deal with me because I have all this list of things, right? And it's not necessarily good, but now that I had identified these things, I understand how I could heal better, right? Now that I know what the list of things that I am dealing with, I could help myself heal. And healing changes, right? When I was younger and I was going through all this depression and suicide and all of these things, I would write because I couldn't talk. Like, it wasn't like I couldn't talk, but it was like I couldn't identify the feelings. I couldn't identify what was wrong because it just built up. So I would just write, and that's how I helped myself. So when this all happened and I was going through my post-traumatic and my postpartum, I was writing, and I was like, this isn't working. This isn't doing it for me anymore, And I was like, why? Because last time it pulled me out of the gutter, man. It saved my life. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna write some journals. And then it didn't work. And I realized that this is a time that therapy is going to work for me. This is when I can talk now. I have a voice now. I can identify, so I could talk, and I could go outside and I could put my toes in the grass, and me and the kids could go pick some leaves and, just be centered, right? I need to center myself a lot nowadays. So the biggest thing as well is that healing does change as you change and you grow, and it's okay. Change is okay. Change is scary. It is scary, but it is okay. So those are my personal experiences. I hope someone connected, and ask away.
Wow, Alexis. Wow. I am going to just pause for a minute and before I say what I want to say next. Thank you, thank you, thank you, not only for a phenomenal presentation, but also for your willingness to share your lived experiences. We know that narratives and storytelling make a huge impact, and your ability to integrate your knowledge, your expertise, and that lived experience to create this powerful ACEs narrative is truly impressive. and appreciate it. And we thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I saw a lot of comments in the chat that others are really resonating with what you shared. And I, for one, truly appreciate everything that you shared and just your authenticity. I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to take a moment to share that with you and our audience today. But one question that I'd like to ask you before we move on is, what can we as individuals do to move this work forward in a positive direction? And what role do you think positive childhood experiences could play? And you can choose either one of these to answer, but I really want to understand your thoughts about what role you think storytelling and sharing lived experiences can play to help prevent ACEs. So I know that was like a 3-part question. You can choose whichever part resonates with you. Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, that's how I felt seen, is when people were putting themselves on the line too. When they said, yeah, I dealt with these things and here I am, and even if I'm not at the end of my fairy tale ending, right? Not everything's figured out, but I'm still here, right? I'm still participating. I'm still trying to help others. I'm working on what I need to work on. I feel seen because, like, yeah, me too. I was trying to, be behind closed doors. I was trying to hide it because I thought it was going to scare people away. And once I seen that another person was like, hey, no, we don't need to hide this. Everyone's dealing with something. Everyone's going through something. Everyone is in a healing process. You don't need to hide that. That's what makes you human. Feelings are scary and they're big, but that is what makes you human. That's what makes this life and this journey beautiful. Even the bad, right? Even the bad, because I'm like, why can't it just be all butterflies and rainbows? Why can't I figure it out within a day and just be done? But no, those hard parts in life is what made me the person I am today. I will never say that I don't want to go, like I would take that out of my life, right? I don't want to take this and this and this and this out. All of the mistakes, all of the hard times, everything, all of the bad, keep it. That's what's part of the journey, right? And there's beauty in it, right? The biggest thing that took me out of it, when I knew I was in the darkest place, right? I know the lesson from this hard time is going to be amazing. It's going to change my life, right? I'm going to learn something so, like, I remember when I was in therapy, she was like, my girl, you have PTSD. And I was like, but then I was like, the lesson that I'm learning from this, the lesson that I am going to learn from this experience and grow from this experience is going to be amazing. And that is one of the biggest things I hope you guys take away too. When you are in one of the hardest times in your life, you will get out and you're going to say, I learned this, 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 and this from this experience. And this has what made me grow. So that's why I'm also on a documentary created by Ken Burns, and I talk about my entire suicide story. If you guys want to check it out, it's really intense. There's also 12 other people, but I will always share the ugly, the good, the healing of it all. I'm still in a healing process. If you guys haven't noticed, I'm still trying to figure out how to heal from these things, but I'm getting there. Right. And the name of the documentary is Hiding in Plain Sight. Check it out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So yeah.
Wonderful. Alexis, if you have that link, please feel free to drop that in the chat for everyone. And I'll wrap this up with your portion of the presentation by just saying, I'm happy that you found your voice, and I'm even happier that you chose to share it with us today. So thank you. We are going to move into the next phase of our panel discussion today, where we begin to talk about action steps, solutions. Where do we go from here? And so I'm going to invite all of the panelists to join us again with your video, if you're able. And I'm going to ask, in the interest of time, I have numerous questions, but I'm just going to start with this one and see if this might generate some discussion amongst the panelists. As you've listened to one another share today, what are your initial thoughts regarding next steps? Where do we go from here? From your perspective, the perspective that you shared today, where do we need to go from here? Can someone just start us off and share your thoughts about that? Where do we go? How do we move this work forward in a positive and meaningful direction?
Ladies first.
Well, and listening to Alexis, I think she's just a wonderful example and model of being honest and self-reflective, right? And sometimes when it comes to tackling the things we're not getting quite right, or our systems aren't getting quite right, we don't want to own those things. But there's something about being honest and self-reflective that can be a part of that too, right? There's a vulnerability to saying, I really don't understand how to talk to a Black man about police brutality and how that's impacting his mental health, right? When you're supposed to be the professional who knows how to help them. And so, I think there's a cue and an inspiration we can draw from her in terms of being vulnerable and honest as professionals about our gaps, about our biases, maybe about our outright racisms and isms that aren't even unconscious, so that we can address them and tackle this work that, we're blessed to be able to do.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent.
You want to hop in, Alexis, or you want me to go?
Go for it. I'm replying to my people here.
Gotcha. We are having some great communication in the chat, by the way. So there's some good resources and information being shared there. I would say, where do we start? I think everybody can start right now with what they have. Even if you're not connected to a professional, you can start doing your own work. And it does start with that radical honesty and acceptance of what has happened or might not have happened for you in your life. I like to talk about the ABCs of resilience. The A is for adaptive awareness, where once you've discovered or once you've understood something, what are you going to do about it, right? And some of that is just accepting what has happened, good or bad, how traumatic it may have been. It's taken place. What should you do about it? And then the B is for balance and boundaries. A lot of times people talk about boundaries, they talk about things that people have done to them that they didn't like, but understanding what your boundaries are before the pain happens is very important. So you need to do kind of a self-assessment on what you like, how do you expect yourself to be treated, and how do you expect to treat yourself? And that's how we understand what our boundaries are. And then find some balance in that too. How much are you I seen someone in the chat talk about pouring from empty cups. How do you have some time for yourself, time for others? Talked about being a mom and how that demand for time is not always under your purview. Like sometimes your kids are like, it's right here, right now. How do you balance that for yourself? How do you balance your time and energy? How do you balance, your money? How do you balance all these things? How do you balance those things for yourself? It's very important. And then the C is for consecutive constructive choices. A lot of times we do things that make us feel good, and then we never go back to it because it's not in our habit yet. And it's important for us to push through and make those things that we enjoy, make those experiences that gave us different perspective, make those things a part of our normal routines and our day-to-days, because those are the things that are going to help you keep pushing through your life. So again, adaptive awareness, balance and boundaries, and consecutive constructive choices.
I'm going to bounce right off of that because you said some great stuff, Brandon. And you know what? I have troubles with keeping two schedules. Oh my gosh. I will make myself a schedule. From 9 to 10, we're going to wake up, we're going to have breakfast, have coffee, and then you're going to take your vitamins, then we're going to work out, and then we're going to do a podcast. We're going to do this every day, right? And I did it for 3 days. Guess what happened? I fell right off. I fell off. I was doing so good. But now I had to focus. I had to redo it because it was way too much at one time, right? I needed to start small and get bigger. So now we're waking up at the same time and then we're going to have coffee, right? And then I went, okay, now we're going to have breakfast after. And then now we're taking vitamins every day. So, and because as soon as my schedule changed, even just a little bit, everything went kaput. And I've learned now that it's my ADHD. As soon as things are off just a little bit, I'm over here, I'm over here. What was I doing? Oh, I was doing laundry. That's right. But now I'm doing the dishes. And then what do I finish first? So I think one thing that really, really helped me in doing that is if I even do the tiniest thing that helps me, that makes my little step towards my mental health, we're doing good. That's still a step, right? But I'm still growing towards that consistency. And I'm still trying to figure out how the heck do I stay consistent? And I am so bad. I'm so bad. But I really do believe, because in those 3 days, man, I felt amazing. I was like, I am on top of the world. I have everything together. No one can touch me, man. Vitamins taken. I'm all good. But I really do believe in that too. But it's also okay to take small steps, right? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know we're winding down, and clearly an hour is not long enough for these types of discussions. But I want to thank our exceptional panelists for a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful discussion today. And before I turn it over to Ashley to close us out, I just want to leave you all with this question. Are we the movement? Over 700 people registered for this panel discussion today. Of the 700 people, I'm asking you, are we the movement? When we go back into our workplaces, our communities, our schools, our churches, our homes, etc., are we the movement? I challenge you to spend some time reflecting on this question until you realize that, yes, we together are the movement. Bring others into the discussion. Be bold, be courageous, fight the power structures, change the narrative, protect our children and families, heal our homes and communities, because we must be the movement. And with that, I'll turn it over to Miss Ashley, who will close us out.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to Dion, our moderator. Powerful words, all kind of gems dropped in the chat. We'll make sure that we pull some of those resources out and share with everyone. This was just the start of our conversation. This panel helped build the foundation for a series that we're going to do over the summer. We will have presenters and speakers from all across the nation talking about how they prevent ACEs in their side of the world. So we'll have a school-based approach discussion on May 23rd. The bit.ly links are here on the screen. We'll also have a community-based approach discussion on June 8th. And then we'll have some folks from the public health sector. So Brandon, what you were talking about, that marriage, public health sector, state government agency approach to preventing ACEs. So we hope that you will join in. And for those who could not make it into the session because we were actually over capacity, we are going to make sure that we have the right amount of capacity for these upcoming sessions, and you'll also receive the recording for today. I also want to put in a quick plug for a free, that's right, a no cost to you mental health summit that's happening virtually May 9th through 11th. It's not too late to register. We're also providing no cost or free CEUs for the summit. So we hope that you will join us for that. There's already 1,700 people registered for the summit, over 60 presenters. And so really good stuff happening, coming soon. So please be sure to register and join us again for the summit. As we close out the session, you will receive a feedback survey. Please respond to that survey so that we know the information that you'd like to hear more about in upcoming trainings and presentations like today. You can always stay in contact with us on social media. And I'm so excited to see you all in the future. Thanks so much for joining, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Take care.